In the office of Kingston's biggest fish depot, Leroy, the depot manager, sat with one leg flung over his desk, chewing roasted peanuts like a man who owned both land and sea. The door creaked open. Tima, the cashier, leaned in, eyes dancing with gossip. Leroy, have you heard the news? Without looking up, Leroy grunted. Which news again? You're always full of noise. Tima stepped closer, lowering her voice. Miss Bishop's son. She's coming here to manage the accounts. The peanuts froze mid-air. Leroy's eyes narrowed. Micheal? Tima nodded. Leroy brushed peanut skins off his chest, a slow smile spreading across his face. No worries, he muttered. The same way I have his mother under my thumb, I'll have him too. But behind the depot stood the real power, Miss Beatrice. Once the wife of one of Jamaica's richest engineers, now a widow who had clawed her way from luxury to survival. When her husband's empire collapsed and he took his own life, Beatrice sold his mansion, bought a modest home, and with the change, built a fish depot, which became Kingston's biggest. And now, her only son Micheal was walking straight into Leroy's territory. Micheal had graduated top of his class in accounting, but big firms wanted experience, not fresh blood. For a year, he refused to join the family business, chasing dreams of a shiny office job. Eventually, pride gave way to reality. On Michael's first day of work, he had stepped inside the depot ready to make a difference. There, behind the counter sat Leroy, relaxed and drinking coffee like the depot belonged to him. "You're Beatrice's son?" Leroy asked without looking at him when Micheal approached him. "Yes," Micheal said, stretching out a hand. Leroy simply glanced at his hand. He didn't shake it. "Right. Your mother mentioned something." Leroy eyed Michael's freshly ironed white shirt and polished leather shoes, then smiled. "Hope those shoes like fish water. This isn't a bank." Without waiting for a reply, Leroy stood and nodded toward the warehouse. "Come, let me show you your office." At the far end of the depot, Leroy stopped in front of a small, dusty office. "This is yours," he said. "You'll find the accounts here. Everything runs through me before it runs through you. Depot's been fine with me managing it, so try not to slow us down." Micheal met his stare and held it. "I'm here to make things run smoother, not slower." Leroy smiled thinly and walked off. By midday, Micheal was already drowning in receipts, invoices, and ledgers, sweat dripping down his neck. Still, he worked steadily. At first, it all looked fine, but then something stuck out, a pattern. Several invoices stamped for premium yellowtail fish, but the price was double the usual cost. And when he traced the numbers against the sales records, the sums refused to balance. The accounts looked clean on the surface, but underneath, something was stinking. Micheal frowned. "That's odd," he muttered. He pushed back from his desk and stepped out into the noisy warehouse. There was Leroy, leaning against a stack of crates, chatting with two workers. "Leroy," Micheal called over the noise, "can you explain the yellowtail shipments from last month? The numbers don't add up." Leroy glanced at him, his laughter slipping. "Hey boy, I don't answer to people born with silver spoons in their mouths. Depot life is for men who sweat, not pretty mama's boys." The workers grinned, nodding like parrots. Leroy brushed past Micheal with a shoulder bump, leaving Micheal standing there frozen in shock. Weeks later, a shipment of mackerel arrived, and Micheal stood by with the manifest in his hand. He counted 3 times, but each time the numbers didn't add up. He stepped forward, raising his voice over the noise. "Hold on. This is supposed to be 60 boxes, not 54. Where are the other 6? But the man kept moving as if he was invincible. Micheal turned towards the counter, and there was Leroy, slouched near the scales, chewing on gum like he was a goat. "Maybe count again," Leroy answered, waving his hand lazily. Michael's voice sharpened. "I don't need to count again. They are missing. And the invoice says we paid for all 60. That got Leroy's attention. "Baby boss, this is the fish business. Sometimes a box or two vanish. You can't get uptight over every little thing. Michael's jaw clenched. A box or two? That's 6 boxes, Leroy. That's money gone, and it's my job to make sure it doesn't happen. The workers nearby froze, glancing between the two men. Leroy's brain thinned. This is my turf. Watch how you speak to me, boy. Don't step on my toes. Michael met his gaze. Then keep your turf clean, and I won't have to. And with that, Michael turned and walked off. The next day, during lunch break, Michael spotted Tima the cashier leaning at the back of the building, puffing on a joint. She was different. She was the only one who treated him with respect. Most of the other staff treated him like a child, and the worst offender was Leroy. Michael walked up to her and leaned on the wall beside her. Hot day, huh? Michael said, smiling at her. They chatted casually for a while. Then Michael asked, Hey, about the mackerel delivery yesterday, does that kind of thing happen often? But the intimate's eyes darted around nervously. Boss, me not talk about them things. Before Michael could even respond, she stabbed the joint and walked away fast, almost breaking into a run. Michael stood staring at her, retreating back in shock. That night, Michael sat in his girlfriend Keisha's apartment, staring at the plate of curried chicken she had made, his favorite. But today, he didn't have an appetite. Keisha walked into the room. Babe, you've been quiet all night. What's on your mind? Michael sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. It's the depot, Keisha. Every day is something. Leroy and his crew treats the place like their personal grocery store. Today, I asked one of the workers about a shipment, and she bolted like I'd asked her to sign her own death warrant. Keisha slid beside him on the couch, resting a hand on his arm. Her lips curved into a small, dry smile. Sounds like you're working with the fish mafia. She chuckled lightly, trying to lighten his mood. Did you speak to your mom about it? I've tried, he said bitterly. She just keeps saying Leroy's been there longer and that I should learn to work with him. Meanwhile, he's running her business into the ground. Keisha's smile faded. Michael, you need to be careful. People get dangerous when you threaten how they eat. He turned to her in frustration. So what am I supposed to do? Just watch them rob my mother blind? She squeezed his hand gently, her tone carrying both warning and care. No, but move smart. Pray, Michael. You hear? Pray for wisdom. Pray for protection. Michael let out a short laugh, shaking his head as he looked at the floor. Anytime I'm serious, your solution is always prayer. Keisha smiled faintly, rubbing his back. The next morning, Michael left for the depot earlier than usual. Today, he had made up his mind. He would start a full-scale audit. He was going to find the evidence to force his mother's hand. But halfway down the road, something twitched at the corner of his eye. Before he could react, a wave of cockroaches burst out of the air vent, spilling across the steering wheel, crawling over his lap, swarming his clothes. Ah, Jesus! Michael shouted, slamming the brake so hard the car jerked to the side. He leapt out, swatting himself desperately. But when he looked again, there was nothing. Not a single cockroach was in sight, neither on his person or in his car. His grandmother's voice rang in his mind. When the cockroaches come for you in broad daylight, heed the warning. The depot now felt like the lion's den, and he was no Daniel. He had no intention of going back there. With trembling hands, he got back in his car and returned home. 2 days later, Keisha stood at his apartment door knocking, worry etched on her face. Michael had not been returning her calls and messages, and she was starting to get worried. When he did not answer, she used her spare key to enter. Inside, she found him curled up on the edge of his bed, his eyes hollow. I can't go back there, Keisha, he whispered when he saw her. Something's not right. You don't just get a car full of cockroaches out of nowhere, only for them to vanish like they were never there. That was a warning. Keisha's heart squeezed. She didn't argue. Instead, she knelt beside him. took his trembling hands and whispered with quiet conviction, "Nothing is greater than the power of God. I'm going to pray and fast on your behalf, Micheal." But Micheal didn't answer. He just looked away ashamed. Keisha did not sleep. For 3 days, she fasted in her little one-bedroom flat. On the morning of the fourth day, Micheal woke up before sunrise. The heaviness in his chest had lifted, and for the first time in days, he felt no fear. He rose, dressed sharply, and drove straight to the depot. When he stepped inside, every conversation stopped. He walked straight to the center of the floor. "Everyone," he said firmly, "meeting now." The staff gathered, exchanging nervous glances. Micheal waited until the room fell silent. Then he spoke. "From today," Micheal said slowly, "there will be changes, major changes. Every single account will now go solely through me. No exceptions. If you have a problem with that," he paused, eyes sweeping the room before locking on Leroy, "there's the door." A heavy silence sat over the room. "That will be all," Micheal said finally, dismissing them. After the meeting, he retreated to his office. For hours, he combed through files, accounts, and receipts. And by nightfall, the puzzle began to reveal itself. There were discrepancies everywhere. When Micheal finally looked up, his phone read 10:03 p.m. He was so deep in audit that he hadn't noticed how late it had gotten. Everyone had gone home long ago. Micheal gathered his notes, locked up, and drove out into the night. At the police checkpoint, he slowed down, rolling down his window. An officer stepped forward, blinding Micheal with his torchlight. "Good evening, officer," he greeted politely. The policeman's tone was cold. "We've had a tip-off. You match the description of a suspect we are looking for. We'll need to search your vehicle." Micheal blinked. "A suspect for what?" The officer didn't answer. "Please step out of your vehicle and open your boot," the officer said flatly. Micheal pressed the release to open the boot. The officer's torchlight froze on something, a medium-sized transparent bag filled with a white powdery substance. The officer's eyes widened. Well, look what we have here." Micheal blinked. What? What is that? I've never seen that before in my life. "Officer, please, I'm telling you." But they weren't listening. Within minutes, they had arrested him and sent him to the police station. The next morning, Keisha and Miss Beatrice came to the station. Micheal sat behind the bars of the holding cell, eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. His mother's face was twisted with shame. "So this is what you've been doing," she spat, her voice low but sharp. "Selling that filth? Is that why you wanted Leroy out? So you could run your dirty operations through my depot?" Michael's chest tightened. "Muma, no, I swear to you, I don't even know how that thing got in my car." Keisha stepped forward. "Muma, please, let's not rush to conclusions. Micheal couldn't have done this." Micheal gave a bitter laugh, his head sinking into his hands. "Keisha, my life is over. How do I prove I didn't do this?" But Keisha only shook her head. She reached through the bars and grabbed his trembling hands. "Your life is not over. You serve a God who defends the innocent. He will turn this setup into your testimony." She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. "Father, please vindicate Micheal. Expose the truth. Let every lie be uncovered." As she prayed, something clicked in Michael's mind, and his eyes shot open. "Keisha, the CCTV." Her eyes flew open. "What CCTV?" "I installed hidden cameras at the depot weeks ago to secretly monitor the staff. If we check yesterday's footage, maybe..." His voice trailed off, hope rising for the first time. Keisha turned to the officer on duty. Please, let us check." The officer hesitated and sighed. "Fine, use your phone." Micheal gave her the passcode. For the next half hour, they scrolled through clip after clip. They were about to give up, but then Keisha's fingers slowed. "Wait, let me reverse it." The footage showed Tima the cashier glancing around nervously. She crept toward Michael's car like James Bond. A small package clashed under her jacket. In one quick move, she popped the boot and dropped it inside. Then she hurried off, her head low. Michael's eyes widened. Miss Beatrice's jaw dropped. The officer whistled under his breath. Well, well, looks like we found your culprit. Escorted by the police, Micheal, Keisha, and Miss Beatrice stepped into the depot. The chatter died instantly. Every worker froze. When Tima, the cashier, spotted them, she went on her knees, palms pressed together, voice breaking. Me sorry, sir, me sorry, but I was sent. Michael's jaw clenched. Sent? By who? Tima's eyes flickered nervously to the back corner. There stood Leroy, arms crossed, trying to look unbothered, but the sweat sliding down his temple betrayed him. It was Leroy, she whispered. He give me 5,000 Jamaican dollar to slip the package in your trunk. Michael sucked in a breath, his voice trembling with contempt. 5,000? You mash up me whole life for 5,000 Jamaican dollar? All eyes turned on Leroy. He panicked, made a dash for the back door, but an officer caught him by the waistband before he could escape. All the fight drained from him, and words poured out in a flood. Yes, I did it. I put Obi on you, so you would lose interest in the business, like I did to your mother some years back. It's the work of the devil. You were sitting on my happiness. Please forgive me. Miss Beatrice's face twisted in disbelief. Leroy, after all I have done for you and your family, this is how you repay me? She lunged, grabbing his collar, shaking him like a rag doll until Michael pulled her back. Leroy's eyes were wild now, his voice trembling. It worked upon you for a while, but you came back. The Obia man said somebody close to you, one woman, was praying and blocking the charm, so I had to physically remove you. I paid Tima to plan the thing. Michael had heard enough. Officer, take them away, he said in a sharp voice. Handcuffed, Leroy and Tima were led out. Later, the court sentenced them to long prison terms. Evidence revealed what Michael had long suspected. Leroy had been stealing for years, funneling goods to stock his own secret cold store. Michael and Miss Beatrice were shaken to the core. Keisha said to them one afternoon, "You can't be part-time Christians fighting full-time devil," she said, pulling them to the altar of prayer. The old staff who had joined Leroy in his schemes were fired. The depot began to flourish again, and 3 years later, they set up 2 thriving branches in other cities. But beyond the profit sheets, one truth remained. Their walk with God had become their true wealth. Hi fam, click the link on the right to dive into yet another captivating tale. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Until next time, it's bye from us at Apenthene African Stories.